Is sales a noble profession? It's a conversation we're going to have today. Of course, we believe it is. We actually think it's the most important business discipline there is out there. But today we're chatting with Lisa McLeod, and she's the author of Selling with Noble Purpose: How to Drive Revenue and Do Work That Makes You Proud. And she actually co-authored this book with Elizabeth Lotardo, originally back in 2012, and then they did a second edition in 2020. So it was an enormously popular book, hence the second edition. And the core idea is that sales teams with a noble purpose, bigger than money, whose aim is to improve the life of their customers and prospects, they outsell transactional salespeople that are just trying to get deals done. I think we all intuitively know today, in this day and age, that's the case. But I love the way that these ladies package this message and information so that we can engage our sales teams today with this noble purpose. One of the data points that's pretty powerful comes out. It says organizations with a purpose bigger than money outperform their competitors. A 10-year study of more than 50,000 brands around the world said that the firms that put improving people's lives at the center of all they do, they outperform the market by huge margins. In fact, they say they have a 3x growth trajectory versus their competitors. So it's pretty interesting. We talk about, what that noble purpose selling is. We also talk about a couple of questions that you might want to think about listening to this podcast today to find your noble purpose as a salesperson or sales team. The first question: how do you really make a difference to your customers? So connecting emotionally with the stories of what you've done for your customers and how you've improved their lives, both at the corporate level for that customer and at the individual buyer level. The second question: how do you differentiate? We spend a lot of time on this with our training. What really is unique and different about you, given that customers' other options in the marketplace? And the third question to think about and then collaborate on is, on your best day, what do you love about your job? Thinking about that. A lot of this is a mindset shift that enables your market to believe that you actually want to help them. And that starts by actually wanting to help them to improve their lives. And that's going to make you feel better about what you do. We talk about a little bit about the brain science associated with this, and that there's two big human needs we all have. One is belonging, and the second is significance. We know purpose helps with drive, right? We learned that from Daniel Pink's great work and all of that kind of good stuff. We have a really deep conversation today on this topic, selling with noble purpose. Lisa, by the way, has authored 4 other books: Leading with Noble Purpose, The Triangle of Truth, Forget Perfect, and Finding Grace. Really enjoyed my conversation with Lisa today. I hope you do too. And if you do, please, folks, like and subscribe to the Selling Well podcast and tell your friends. And when you like and subscribe or leave a rating for us, that really helps us get great guests like Lisa. So thanks for doing so. Folks, here's Lisa McLeod. Hey, Lisa, welcome to the show. It's so great to meet you face to face.
It is great to be here, Mark.
Well, listen, I was really excited for today. And as always, everybody who listens to the show knows we pick authors. So we read somebody's book and then we really love it. And then we sort of chase them down. And I did that with you. I hounded you until we got you on the show. But I was really wondering how it took me so long, because, you've got 5 great books out. Today, we're talking about selling with noble purpose, how to drive revenue and do work that makes you proud. And you co-wrote that with Elizabeth Lotardo, but originally back in 2012. And it was so popular and did so well. You did a reprinting or second printing, in 2020. You've also written Leading with Noble Purpose. So Selling with Noble Purpose, Leading with Noble Purpose, The Triangle of Truth, Forget Perfect, and Finding Grace. And so today we'll focus on selling with noble purpose. But before we do, maybe a little bit of the short story, Lisa. I know you've had a great background. You're a sales trainer with P&G, but tell the audience a little bit about your journey that got you to where we are today.
Well, Selling with Noble Purpose is certainly my most popular book, and it represents my own journey. I was, as you said, an ex sales trainer. I was a former VP of sales. I ran a sales training company. And like a lot of people that run sales organizations, I had a lot of pressure to deliver numbers. But also, like a lot of people who have seen a lot of sales calls, I was always curious as to what was that sort of magic thing that the top
Mm,
performers had. And how I actually landed on selling with noble purpose was through my work as a consultant, where I did a study for a big biotech company to identify what differentiated the top performers. And I'm a curious person. I'm curious about what makes people tick. Probably comes from unpacking my own dysfunctional background. And we can get into that later. But one of the things that I determined, and it was a team that I worked with, was that the differentiator between the good performers and the exceptional, the top of the top, the thing that the top of the top had that was different was they had a different internal compass.
mm,
Instead of just focusing on closing the deal, their true north, their higher purpose was improving life for customers. And the numbers were actually a trailing indicator. And when I discovered that, it's kind of like one of those scenes in a movie where the person realizes that their spouse is having an affair and they flash back to like 100 different scenes and they go, oh, there was that, there was that, there was that. In that, it was actually a moment when one sales rep said to me, talked about a patient. She was in biotech sales. And she said, she's my higher purpose. It was this grandmother. And she had this visual imagery of the end game for her sales, this patient. And it was when she said that to me that I flashed back on 100 other situations where I went,
yeah.
that was the difference. And I also went to my own personal self and thought, when was I at the top of my game? And it's when I was that true believer.
Well, it's a pretty compelling story at the beginning of the book because and correct me if I'm wrong, but at some point in time, you're at a board table with that same client and they had some data in front of them that you didn't have. And they
Mhm.
asked your opinion after interviewing or spending time with the reps who you thought the top reps would be. And you called out these 5 people
Yeah.
that seemed to be client first, selling with purpose. And they said, well, that's an amazing trick because they are our top reps. And then they said, why? And so you explained why you had come to that conclusion. So the other thing I think is just the timing. Here we are recording this in 2025. So this is 13 years ago,
Yes.
this was coming up. And there's been just such a movement to saying, get away from this idea of closing the deal or get the metric or in my conversation, I want to end up with one more qualified opportunity. Get away from all of that. And this idea of just trying to help somebody is actually the means to the end. So get
It
away
is.
from the outcome.
I like to think that I was one of the people that I was both inspired by and propelling this conversation
Yeah.
around moving the emotional center of sales. And what's interesting, I've been doing this for a long time. I was a sales trainer when I was like 24 years old. I was a field sales trainer for
Ah,
P&G. So I've been thinking I was a sales manager for my college paper. So I've been thinking about sales and writing about sales and reading about sales for a long time. And there's a nuanced difference that I wanna draw people's attention to. So I know a lot of sales leaders listen to your podcast, as well
yes.
as people, as well as CEOs of companies. And the nuanced difference that I wanna draw your attention to is here's what we know, and that hunch that I had back then has later been proven true and been proven true by academically vetted research. So here's the truth and the nuance I wanna draw your attention to. The truth is that salespeople with a purpose bigger than money, salespeople who truly want to improve the lives of their customers, outperform salespeople just focused on the number. But the nuance is we've been trying to get salespeople to be customer focused for 50 years. And we've said, focus on the customer, focus on the customer. The nuance difference is going beyond focus on the customer and instead instilling within the seller a deep purpose. Your life is your job is to improve this customer situation. And that's very different than if, I was with a student and it was focus on the student, focus on the student, focus on the student. But instead of I'm with the student and said, you need to improve their ability, that's going to be a completely different situation. And I think that's what was missing in a lot of the previous conversation was it was just focus on the customer generally rather than how are you actually going to improve this customer's condition?
Yeah, actually, it's an interesting nuance to call out because a lot of the past may have been a little more tactical. I think maybe there was
Yes.
good intent in there, but it might have been a
That
bit
was
more
good intent.
tactical where they go focus on the customer so you can sell them something.
Right.
It's quite a bit different than, if you have this just relentless focus on making their situation better,
Right.
then along that journey, good things are going to happen to you. But that also means as you kind of understand their world and have the business acumen and the industry acumen to be able to help them achieve a better future, it may or may not mean something for you immediately.
And that's what people worry about. But what if it's
Yeah.
not best to buy from me? I can tell you that the companies that have employed this methodology grew their revenues, grew their deal size, sold at a higher margin, and cemented long term customer relationships and were able to
Yep.
lift out of that transactional sale. And that's kind of the challenge. If you're a sales leader, you got to hit a number. That's not some loosey goosey, maybe if it's right for the customer, maybe if it's not. But the challenge with coaching to the numbers is it's like a track coach trying to coach to times. I could sit there and say, okay, Mark, your time's 10 seconds. You got to get it to 9. You got to get it to 9. You got to get it to 9. And I could shout at you all day, get it to 9, get it to 9. But that's not really coaching you.
Right.
That's not
That's me-
behavioral.
that's just measuring the past.
It's
So,
measuring
so
past. And
yeah.
as a sales leader, one of the things I say is, so I'll give you an example. We worked with a big consulting firm and we did an exercise where we divided the room in two. We said, okay, this room each needs to sell $1 million deal. This room needs to deliver $10 million in value to clients. You have 5 minutes, go. And literally in 5 minutes, the people who were focused on trying to sell $1 million deal were like, we go here, we go there. The people who were focused on trying to deliver 10 million to their clients were like, what if we came up with this? What if we did that? What if we helped them with this? And at the end of the day, you say, who's going to be more successful?
The other thing I loved about reading about this was when you shared that exercise, the excitement with which one side of the room was really engaged because you triggered that emotional reaction. And the other side, it's again about that. There's something far less emotionally, engaging about thinking what's in it for me and how do I hit my number. By the way, I think for those listening out there, this is where you're going to hear things from your sales team, when you're managing and somebody comes in and go, hey, how's it going? How's the week been? And they go, what a grind. If you're out there just picking up the phone or just knocking on doors or just continue to try and pull people along to a deal, there's a lack of that sense of purpose. But if you're saying, hey, my role here is actually to improve the lives of the people I'm working with and try and help them run better businesses, I have this higher purpose. I just feel better. We
I'm
used to work.
alive.
Yeah, and Lisa, we used to articulate this a lot in our training, but I'd never captured it as well. I don't know how I never came across your book, but I hadn't captured it as well, the way you've got this captured. And just a data point, I think that's worthy of taking a listen to, team. So in the book, you write that, quote unquote, organizations with a purpose bigger than money outperform their competitors. A 10-year growth study of more than 50,000 brands around the world said that firms that put improving people's lives at the center of all they do outperform the market by a huge margin. The study was done with Jim Stengel, hope I'm pronouncing his names right, former chief marketing officer for P&G, who said those clients who center their business on improving business people's lives have grown at triple the rate of their
Yeah.
competitors. So,
So the
go ahead, please.
the research is there, and so I'll translate it into a scenario everyone can relate to. So
Please.
imagine you have one company or sales team in a room saying, "How can we grow? How can we make more money? Who can we call on? How can we close bigger deals?" There's nothing wrong with it. I've led a sales team. But imagine you have another team, their competitor across town, and they're saying, "How can we improve life for our customers? How can we find more customers that we can improve? How can we help them improve in bigger, bolder ways?" That second team, even if the products are exactly the same, I mean, the second team, if they have some malleability, they're going to be more innovative. But even if the offerings are exactly the same, we just work with a metals company. They're not going to invent a new kind of metal, at least not this week. And so what happens is when we sat with them and said, "How can we improve our customers' lives in better ways?" Well, we could go to some other divisions. Well, we could help them with this. Well, we could help them with that. And this company exponentially grew their revenue and beat their competition because instead of sitting in a room talking about themselves, they were sitting in a room talking about how to improve customers. And that nuanced difference, you can tell in that grinded out company, customers are talked about as an object, a thing to get from.
Yes.
You can tell by the language, the way they talk about the customers. In that noble purpose company, they talk about customers with specificity. "Hey, we just helped so and so with this. Hey, we helped so and so with this." And they're talked about as someone that they're having an impact on.
There's so many things to unpack there, and so many things to call out. Anyone listening to this, first of all, you have to be respectful to those who are absent. If you're in a sales meeting, not speaking about a client or a prospect with the utmost respect, that bleeds through. That's a culture thing. That's a
Right.
value thing. If you're selling for a company doing that today, find another job. Find another job. There's a whole lot of other detail behind that, but the short answer is you got to find another place to work. The second thing I sort of touch on there a little bit is this, you talked about it, even if they have a similar product. We know the product almost doesn't matter today outside of a minimum threshold of
Yeah.
capability. The research you've been published at HBR, Harvard Business Review, another study in Harvard Business Review around the time you wrote this book, 2012, they published the research that Charlie did that said 39% of the time a B2B purchasing decision favors the company that sold better versus the company that had the best price
That's
or
exactly
quality
right.
or service features. It doesn't matter. So what really matters is, and my belief is always this, the company that I feel buyers will go forward with, the organization that they believe understands them best.
Yes. And
And
it's
if
reflected in the way you sell.
it's absolutely
Yeah.
reflected in the way you sell. The other thing, this is why this is such a powerful mindset. And we're going to, in a minute, team, we're going to get to how do we actually start to apply this mindset to our company with kind of three key questions to ask ourselves. But right now, this mindset, this client first mindset, this noble approach, helping people mindset is so important because 2 weeks from now, Lisa, you probably know him, but I'm actually interviewing Dr. Nick Morgan, who's written 9 or 10 books on mindset speaking. He teaches the folks at Harvard as well. His great book is called Can You Hear Me? Power Cues is another one. But what he actually speaks to is there are conscious and unconscious triggers when we're communicating with somebody. And they're picking up on the conscious triggers and the unconscious triggers. But we have this almost a sixth sense of sensing somebody's intent. And that's why this noble selling purpose is so important to me. I think you've really nailed it here because we can sense, you've had that experience, right? You meet somebody at a cocktail party and you just connect with them. It just
Mhm.
feels like this great connection. The same things happen. You've met somebody, they're saying the right things, but there's something about you that just says, I'm not into this person. You're almost a little bit repulsed by them. something's happening with the subconscious where you're picking up on triggers that go, danger. I don't know about this person.
You
So this mental intent is so important.
It is, and where it shows up in the language of the seller, and it shows up in the some little unconscious qualifiers that people do. And I wanna go back to something you said, when you said if you're working for a company that only thinks of the customer as a number. A lot of people that are in that situation reach out to me,
Mhm.
and what I would say is, if you're working for a company where they say, "All we care about our customers is they give us money and they're awful," and that yeah, you need to go work for somewhere else. But if you're working somewhere that's more like your normal company, where the VP of sales is saying, "We gotta hit these targets. Can you get this customer in this month?" Don't make assumptions. We had one situation, ended up being our absolute biggest global client, where
Wow.
one sales team read the book and they were in that meeting. The sales leader was in the meeting with all the other sales leaders, where the head of sales was saying, "We got to get these numbers in. We got to get these numbers in." And they said, "We're going to get our numbers in." But one thing I always like to remind myself of is these are human beings. And every one of these numbers represents someone, it was a travel company, someone that has had a great experience because of us. And they said
Mhm.
that in the meeting, and the whole emotional center shifted. And everyone went, "Yeah, that's right." And so you, no matter who your boss is, and if you are the boss, it's gonna be even more powerful. But you have the power to look at those numbers and say, every one of these represents someone whose life we improved. And when you talk about intent, I'll give you an example. So I taught spin selling for years, which everyone's pretty much
Dr. Neil Rackham, yeah.
from Neil Rackham. I was a spin trainer, and it's part of the arsenal of experiences that I drew on, where I would watch people use the same question and go, "But it just sounds better coming from them." And
Yes.
I realized it was intent. So there's that age old sales question. So what keeps you up at night? And I can ask that question in that icky sales way. Or I could say, so if I could show you a way to do it
Great
better,
example.
faster, cheaper, would you do it? And I can ask that question in that icky sales way. Or that same question at the end of a really intentional discovery, where I said, "So it seems like this and this are your biggest challenges, and you're dealing with this." As you look across the landscape of all those things, what are the ones that keep you up at night? That
Yeah.
exact same question now feels totally different. And then if I ponder and go, "So if I could show you a way to solve that and that, would that be helpful to you?" You are reading, if you're watching this, you can see it better. But even if you're just listening, you can hear my intent, because the question is in the service of improving your condition, and you can feel it. And the thing about salespeople is they already know you're in sales. They already know you want to sell something. That's already the framework for operating. So you don't need to be the one pushing it, pushing it, pushing it too early in the call.
Well, it's such a great example because we get engaged by a lot of folks, Lisa, which would be mid-sized organizations, significant size companies, but they're mid-size, where in many cases the biggest deals still need to be sold by the founder.
Yeah.
So, and they come to us because they go, we still can't translate somehow what the founder's doing to the majority of the sales team. And when you travel around, and I know you do a lot of this when you're traveling around with people in the field and you see what goes on, it's that intent that's the difference. When the founder's in the room with the potential buyers or the other client, the prospect, and they're asking questions, they're truly authentic questions. And the other side believes they're authentic because they're going, listen, the founder doesn't need one more deal. The
Right.
founder's already just fine. So he's not, he's really interested. Whereas the intent of the salesperson, sometimes that same question feels like manipulation
Right.
because it feels like you're getting drawn down this path. Whereas if I say yes, 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 then suddenly I'm going to get hit with something instead of just this authentic curiosity.
Yeah.
Diane Hamilton, great, somebody you should probably know. Maybe you do, but just great thought leader on this topic of curiosity. authentic curiosity with
Well,
the
and the thing
intent of,
about the founder is, so we've worked with a lot of founder-led companies that they've
yeah,
tried to scale. And
yes.
so one of them, very public example, Canadian company. I should also tell people I'm not a 3-pack a day smoker. I'm recovering from COVID, so my voice is raspy.
And by the way,
Just
thanks so much for coming today.
just so
Appreciate you
you know,
doing it.
I feel better when my voice is raspy. But I'll give an example. We worked with Hootsuite, who's a
Oh,
Canadian-based,
yeah.
Vancouver-based company, became a unicorn, billion-dollar valuation, and they were a founder-led company. And the founder has that deep belief, because you don't found a company because you were just looking around going, "Hey, that'd be interesting." Companies are founded because the founder saw a need in the market and they went, "Someone should be doing that. Oh, I guess it's me." Um, and so the founder has that deep understanding of how important the offering is and how the offering improves life for customers. And it was based on their experience, based on their research, based on this need they saw. A lot of companies are founded based on a bad experience. Like it shouldn't be done that way. It should be done this way. And
Yeah.
so that founder has that deep belief. What's hard is to scale it. And
Yes.
often gets muddied when you scale is that deep belief on how we make a difference uniquely. And it's nobody's fault. It doesn't happen by design. It happens by default. So I'll give you an example. So Hootsuite, we wrote an HBR piece you can put a link to on how to scale your sales team quickly. And one of the techniques we used was customer impact stories.
Hmm.
Took all these people who would say, "We're just a bunch of hockey players that were working at their headquarters."
Hey, come on.
That
I'm
was their
Canadian.
description, not mine.
Yeah.
And we turned them into storytellers, because stories are what seed deep belief. Stories, not just of how we closed the big deal, but stories of how we made a difference to customers. And
It's
those
a great,
stories spread the belief, and they're different from those antiseptic case studies that people put on their websites.
just love that. And by the way, you're absolutely right. I'm Canadian. We are all hockey players. It is highly rare for us. Anybody under 20 who didn't grow up playing hockey, very, very rare. We
Right.
also know Wheat very well. We know the sales leadership of that team very well, but it's such a great segue, Lisa, into how we actually put this into practice. So for everybody out there listening today, the easiest thing, this is an excellent read, by the way, team. So that's why we asked Lisa to join us today. So everybody should be picking up Selling with Noble Purpose, How to Drive Revenue and Do Work That Makes You Proud with Lisa and Elizabeth Latardo. Read the book. It's a great book. But you led to the first one here. There's 3 key questions you suggest asking yourself
Yeah.
as you try to create that noble purpose. And the first one was, how do you make a difference to your customers?
Yeah. How do you make a difference in quantitative and qualitative ways? And that's really important. And what I want to draw people's attention to is the subtitle of the book: How to Drive Revenue and Do Work That Makes You Proud. It's those two things as a leader that you are always trying to drive: the numbers and the sense of pride and meaning. And those two are directly related. The sense of pride and meaning drives the numbers. And so when you ask your team, how do we make a difference to customers? Ask it of yourself and ask it of your team. And the challenge is, the way most people initially answer it is this very antiseptic value prop. We provide organization. No, give
Yes.
me an example. What you want to say is,
Yeah.
give me an example. So we had one company that was an IT company, and they did IT for small business. Everybody knows small businesses, the IT is
100,000 companies like that exist, by the way. There's
right.
nothing more common than one of those
Right.
companies.
So it's nothing differentiated. They're not going to sell, "We're better IT people." Okay. But we said, "How do you make a difference?" And they said, "Well, we take away their IT headaches." Well, they all say that too. So I said, "Give me some examples." And they started telling stories. Well, this one customer, they said that they didn't get calls at 1 in the morning from their data center. Well, another customer said that they could finally focus on their business. And so it's in that qualitative description that fuels the deep belief in the team, not just the concrete, we improve efficiency by 5%.
And that's the first thing that new hires should be taught. In the old
Yes.
world, what was the first thing they're taught? Products and features.
Right.
And that led us to 10 years of point somebody to a demo, 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 terrible conversion rates. You'd have no idea why somebody doesn't buy after a demo. It's because nobody cares about technology. They
And no
care
one
about what it does for them.
connected the dots. And the only way, there are two ways you can connect the dots. The first way is what the company needs to do, which is deep intelligence about your customers. So when you're rolling out a new piece of technology, you say, here's our typical customers. Here's what their day looks like. Here's what their challenges are. Here's what they spend time on that they hate. Here's what they wish they could do. Here's why we developed this piece of software to help them with that. So it's in the service of that. So that's what the company needs to do. Then, as an individual seller, when I'm making calls, I want to be saying, so a lot of people in your position are worried with this and this. How is that affecting you? So then I want to
Yes.
get specific so that when I go back and present, instead of doing a demo, I'm saying, here are the three things you told me were the most important. Let's talk about how to handle those. And I can always tell, people send me their pitch decks, and I can always tell based on the order. If it leads
Yes.
the product, I say, I bet you have a low conversion rate. Funny you should mention that. That's why we called. Yeah, that's why.
So, first one, how do you make a difference to your customers? Really being able to articulate and understand that and live that and then communicate it.
Yeah.
The second way of kind of rolling this out or thinking about it for your firm, if you're listening today, so hard. We do so much work with clients on this, but how do you actually differentiate from your competitors? Remembering do nothing is probably your biggest competitor.
Right. Not taking any action. And how do you do it differently? Again, the traditional reaction is, well, our product is 5% cheaper. And that's great. And if you were the one that invented the iPhone, that's good on you. You can show the product, do the scroll on a video, and we'll all buy it. But most people don't have that.
Right.
Most people work for a construction company or a metals company or a travel company where you could search the internet. So that how you do it differently is both quantitative and qualitative. And we were working with one company, and I mentioned them to you. They were one of our early adopters, and it was G Adventures based in Toronto. And I remember the founder, we were there with the team, the leadership team, and we were getting started. And the founder was like, where does this live in terms of a lexicon and how we do it? And one of the employees, and I love them. They are a no pretense company. And one of those senior leaders said, it lives in your effing heart. But he said it. And one of the things I like about that, which is how do we do it differently? One of the ways you do it differently could be we're more curious. We care more.
Yes.
Like it could be some factual things. One company came up with, we care more. And then we said, well, if we care more, what are the small points during the sales and delivery process that we could illustrate that? And it becomes very meaningful.
Well, I love that. We're fond of saying, Lisa, that how you sell becomes part of that competitive differentiation.
Yeah, the
So,
way they're experiencing. So if you say we care more, what this company said is because we care more, we do a lot of homework before we make our first sales call.
by the way, it shows it's not just talk, right? It shows. The third, so team, is you start to think about applying noble selling purpose for your business. The third item that we talked first to, how do you make a difference to your customers and knowing that? How do you differentiate from your customers? The third one is what I really love. On your best day, what do you love most about what you do? What
Yeah.
a great question to ask and then have a group think about.
Yeah. And you said the operative word there, ask and have a think about. Because too often, like if a marketing team took these three questions, how do we make a difference to our customers? How do we do it differently? on the best day, what do most employees love about their job? They could probably come up with an answer. And it might be inspiring and they might do a deck or they might do a video or something like that. And that's great. But what I need for a top performing team is I need it internalized within the team members. So rather than telling them, how do we make a difference? I'm asking them. Rather than
Yes.
telling them, how do we do it differently? I'm asking them. And then that last one, on your best day, what do you love about
Love
it?
it.
I want them to internalize that because too often the whole employee engagement conversation is around what can we do for them versus how can we tee them up to where they have the tools and they understand. And that question, on your best day, what do you love about your job? I'm not just asking that so I can get a list and put it out and say, here's what everybody loves about working here. I want you to internalize that.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, I'm sure it's in, which I'm going to look forward to reading, Leading with Noble Purpose. We're not asking questions so we then use it as evidence to manipulate you.
Right.
It's the authentic question. By the way, that's a really important thing for everybody listening to this podcast to think about. Why are you in this profession? It's too easy to get in. And the problem is, once we're in, sometimes we might get addicted to things like a little bit of money,
Mhm.
or we might be working for a really cool company, but we don't actually like this process of helping other people this way.
And the thing that what happens is we what Selling with Noble Purpose taps into is the two core human needs, belonging and significance. We wanna be part of something bigger than ourselves, and we wanna know that our contribution matters. And so oftentimes people will say, "Oh, do you do work for, like, the American Cancer Society or the nonprofits?" And sometimes but we do work with a concrete company because you might not think concrete is the sexiest product in the world, but it's holding up half the world. So, if you're people often say I had one guy come up to me and say, "Well, I really get this noble purpose, but my wife is the one that really has the noble purpose because she's a kindergarten teacher." And I was like, "Well, you lead 250 people." So
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
it's the same. And so if you have customers that are buying from you, you're helping them. Otherwise, they wouldn't buy.
This is when this thing where you find somebody who's in the right spot.
Yeah.
I've just had two great examples in the last 24 hours personally, where you find somebody doing something in life where they know why they're doing it, they know why they love it, and they're so good at it, it becomes contagious. And we literally, it's just on me, where I mentioned earlier, we're based in Toronto. We got hammered with a little bit of snow. It's all melting very quickly. We're having some flooding problems. And we thought, hey, we need some quick replacement of some downspouts. And my lovely wife had somebody come over yesterday and said, hey, listen, I think you need to tear these down. And this guy kind of took a look and said, no, 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 no. This is what's happening. There's clogging because of your positioning. He took them down, unclogged them, put them back up and said, this is no big deal at all. You don't need anything new. And we said, okay, well, that's wonderful. How much? And he said, no, no, no. I'm in the area. This is no big deal. It took me 15 minutes. And you thought to yourself, what an experience. What a giving experience. I
Right.
know Bob
And
Bird,
who are you gonna call whenever you have a gutter problem?
oh, my
Who are you
goodness, I
gonna
can't wait.
We have an app in the US called Nextdoor where you can put on where you
Yeah.
neighbors connect. Who are you gonna put? Best gutter guy ever. And I think it's a great story, and a sales exec or a CEO is like, "I can't have my people running around all the time for free." So I think what I wanna draw people's attention to in your story is it's the intent.
Yeah.
And he could have said, "Hey, it's a minimum $50 service charge, no big," and you would have happily paid it. So it's the intent. I am here to help you. And when you give your team that "I," they see things differently. They look differently. They're more curious. They ask better questions. They come up
Yeah.
with better solutions, and the customer reads the intent.
Lisa, this is a conversation we could have for a couple of hours. I have a feeling we're at some point in time, we figure out a way of getting you in front of some of our training workshops because I just love this topic. But I did want to say thank you specifically before we wrap for one thing. Our belief is that professional B2B selling is a profession.
Yeah,
And well, I've always said it without even seeing your book, it's a noble profession. And one of the things, there's this move afoot out there to try and migrate away from the term sales. Or we work with a lot of folks who are in account management and go, I could never be in sales, almost with this 70-year-old stereotype that selling's bad and so on and so forth. This is I think the most important business discipline there is out there. Nothing starts until we get some revenue, and it is noble. And we can change this, but we need it with education and training and client first mentality and a noble purpose. But I believe someday there's going to be formal certification as an ongoing
absolutely.
process in my lifetime, for this. So that's why I love this with selling with noble purpose. It resonated so much for me because this is where we take this whole business discipline. So thank you. What a great, great book.
Well, it is interesting, and I'm very appreciative of that, and that is my wish too. And I want to state the facts. Sales is the only profession that is defined by the people who do it badly. Because those
Mm,
pushy, grabby, lying salespeople, the research tells us they're not effective.
mhm.
Every profession has people that aren't effective. There's bad teachers, there's bad doctors, there's bad priests. I mean, we all know this, but we don't allow it to define the profession. The research tells us the salespeople that are at the top of their profession, that are performing, that are delivering the numbers that make the wheels of commerce move, care very deeply about their customers.
Your book you referenced, Drive by Daniel Pink. Daniel's been a guest on our show once, if not twice. And at the end of one of them, I asked him about sales or why he wrote To Sell is Human.
Right.
He almost said exactly what you just said verbatim. He said he wrote To Sell is Human because there was a gap between this stereotype of B2B sales and what his experience was with people who were very good at B2B sales. And the gap was so big that he thought he had to investigate the topic.
Right. And we created, I mean, the title is account manager, customer success, like all those matter, but there's not a company alive that if you said, "Are sales important? Is
Yeah,
revenue
no.
important?" They'd say no.
Yeah, that's right.
So the act of producing it ought to be one of the top prestige jobs in the company.
What a great place to leave it, Lisa. What a pleasure meeting you and speaking with you again today. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for joining. How do today's listeners learn more about you outside of selling with noble purpose or leading with noble purpose? How do they learn more about you and what you do?
Just Google Noble Purpose, you'll find me. You can go to our website and follow me on LinkedIn. I put a lot of content on LinkedIn for free. Whenever I write a piece for Harvard Business Review, I post it on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thanks again for joining, Lisa.
Such a pleasure.
Team, thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please like and subscribe to the Selling Well podcast, because that's actually how we get great guests like Lisa McLeod when you do that. As well, we're growth oriented. So the reason we do this podcast is we want to improve the performance and professionalism of B2B sales. And in doing so, we believe we're improving the lives of everyone in sales. This podcast is meant to help, but we know we can get better. So if you've got some constructive criticism for us about this podcast or what you'd like to see to make this even more valuable to you, we'd love to hear from you. Please email me, Mark Cox at inthefunnel.com, Mark Cox at inthefunnel.com. That's my personal email address. I answer every bit of constructive criticism we get, and I thank you for it. In the meantime, we'll see you next time on the Selling Well podcast, team, and thanks again for joining.